Marco Rubio fighting back in the polls against Governor Charlie Crist, I should say, for Florida's open Senate seat. Now Rubio is unveiling a brand new 12-point plan to spur growth, kind of Reagan-style tax cuts. At the heart of it all, Republican Senate candidate Marco Rubio joining us now. Thanks for being here, Marco. Good to see you.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me back.
Now, let me first talk about something that is not on the list. I've read through your 12-point program, and I'm in agreement with most of it. But one thing that's not on is cutting spending. Now, I imagine it's there by implication, but, you know, I remember Ronald Reagan when he was president, and he did have a very aggressive tax rate cut plan, but he also had a very aggressive cut in domestic spending. Why isn't that a part of your plan?
Well, it will be. In fact, we're unveiling our plan in stages. So we've decided to lead off with job creation through the tax cuts. Stage 2 of the plan will be some specific spending cuts that we're going to roll out sometime in the next couple of weeks. But so it's a multifaceted plan. And what we're trying to tell people is the only way to pay down this debt is going to be a combination of growing our economy, reducing the growth in government spending or holding it constant so it doesn't continue to grow the debt, and entitlement reform. So we're going to outline each of those as separate initiatives, although they're all part of the same plan.
Well,
but we're definitely going to have a specific and detailed cut plan.
After the spending and all of the new bureaucracies created out of the FinReg program and the health care program and everything else, I think you're going to have to do more than hold it steady. You're definitely going to have to do some cutting. So we wait that, but let's get to your issues now. And I want to start sort of in the middle of it. Idea number 7, stop the value-added tax. As I mentioned in the introduction, yes, this debt commission clearly is leaning towards an additional tax, a new value-added tax, not to be confused with a fair tax, by the way, which would replace the IRS, but in addition to the IRS. Isn't that the most important of all these issues?
Well, it would be devastating if it passed. And the fact that it's even being discussed at high levels of public policy making is destructive to the economy. It injects a new level of uncertainty. You know, people try to make decisions on what to do with their money, and one of the things that's going to discourage them from creating jobs in America is all this talk of a value-added tax, not to mention things that are already in place, like Obamacare, or you know, these efforts to have card checks. So absolutely, it would be devastating to America.
Number 8, by the way, is something you just mentioned: repeal and replace Obamacare. How tough is that going to be?
It'll be difficult, but I think once you make the argument to people that, look, number 1, Obamacare grows the deficit and the debt, which we can't afford. Number 2, it's going to kick millions of Americans off of their existing plan and force them on to government-sponsored exchanges and so forth. Number 3, it creates this perverse incentive for many employers either not to hire more people so as to not trigger the mandate, or to force a bunch of people off their plans because it's going to be cheaper to pay the fine. I think there are easier ideas to replace it, like allowing individuals to have the same tax benefit as their employers, like allowing people to buy insurance from any company in America across state lines, like allowing small businesses to enter into associated plans, right, pooling together with other small businesses. These are much better proposals than what Obamacare presents us.
Now, the problem is once a bureaucracy gets started, it's very hard to remove it. It can be done, it has been done, and there's a game plan to do it, but it's tough. We now have this new financial reg bill, which, by the way, Scott Brown, the man who came into office saying he was against Washington business as usual, voted in favor of. What do you think of that, and how can you tell voters out there that you won't fall into the trap that apparently he's fallen into in just going along with the Beltway?
Well, I would never support a plan of this magnitude. Look, there is things out there that can be done to help in the financial markets, to increase transparency, to deal with the issue of derivatives. But this is so broad and sweeping, and it's going to have all sorts of unintended consequences. It's just one more strike against the American economy. You add that to all this discussion about a value-added tax, cap and trade, card check, the uncertainty regarding the tax rates going forward, the expiration of the inheritance tax, the alternative minimum tax. I mean, the list goes on and on, just a plethora of rhetoric and actions from Washington that are forcing the private sector to sit on their hands, keep their money in the bank, or invest it in other countries.
Now, to keep the Bush tax cuts where they are, that is to prevent tax rates from going up as a result of the sunset of those tax cuts, is going to be very, very difficult to do, because Congress loves it when they can just fold their arms and wipe their hands of an issue. They don't have to vote on anything. They just allow the tax cuts to expire. So how do you get those tax cuts permanent?
Well, by pointing out to people that what is going to happen to their tax bill starting early January of next year if they're not extended and made permanent. The reason we don't just want to extend it, the reason why we need to make those tax cuts permanent is because we have to provide certainty. We have to provide certainty to the American private sector and to the private sector around the world that this is what your tax rate is going to be next year, and this is what it's going to be, by the way, 5 years from now. You know, the only way people can plan a business is if they know what their bottom line is going to be going forward. And when your tax rate is at the whim of whoever's in charge of Congress on a yearly basis, that's not good for entrepreneurship. That's not good for job creation.
By the way, what do you think happened to Scott Brown?
Well, I don't know all the details behind his decision, so I would hate to opine on it. I'm not sure what the political pressures are back in his home state, and we would certainly rather have Scott Brown there than the alternative because we know he's not going to be a vote for Harry Reid. I do not share his belief that this financial plan is the right vote, and I would not vote the same way.
And can you make some kind of assurance to the voters who hope you're not in favor of government that you wouldn't do what he has done?
Oh, absolutely. Not only would I not do it, I would work every day in the Senate to undo some of these things and to prevent some of them from ever happening. And that's why we wanted to unveil these specific ideas, because I want to be held accountable to these ideas. I want 2, 3, 4 years into my Senate term for people to look at me and see that I have fulfilled the promise that I've made on each of these ideas. It's too many people today run on talking points and sound bites. Not enough of them run on specific public policy. I want my campaign to be built on specific public policy that I can be held accountable to.
Marco Rubio, who's running for the U.S. Senate seat from the state of Florida. Good to see you, Marco. Thanks for coming back again.
Thank you. I look forward to coming back.